So I don't know if we did this the other day. I think we may have. But you'll notice that when I'm in my IRB and I have like an array of names, that's interesting. That from time to time they format like this nicely with color, and if there are like numbers, right, they format in a different color. This comes through a library called AwesomePrint, and its purpose is to take what would normally come from a P, an output of P, like the inspect, right? To go to Anastasia's question earlier, that's what happens when you puts names. This is what you get with puts names inspect. So see the difference between names 2s, right? Names and inspect, right? You get like the programmer's print. That's the same thing that p names does. But notice that when I do p names, it knows to print it in this nice color. That's from this gem or library called AwesomePrint. So if you'd like that fancier output, you can do gem install AwesomePrint. This is kind of like yarn add or npm install. The difference being in Ruby, there's no such thing as global libraries and project-based libraries. Right, remember in Node, in JavaScript, we would sometimes do yarn add, and we had to be in our project directory and it added it to the project. But if we were installing something like app, we did yarn add global or npm install global, because npm and JavaScript has the idea of this package is only available to this project and this package is available to the entire system. Ruby doesn't make that differentiation. It just has libraries, and they're called gems, right? Cool, right? Rubies and gems. And if you're looking for where are all the gems in the whole world, they are on rubygems.org. This is where all of the gems live. This is where if you publish your own library, this is where you publish it. to rubygems.org. Right? And if someone tells you about a library, like, hey, there's a library called AwesomePrint, you can come in here and search for it, right? And it has a little bit of a sense of like, maybe this one with 69 million downloads is the one I'm looking for, not like these with 25, right? Super awesome print and super awesome print Rubocop and good print, right? And what's great about this is you can take any gem you read a blog article about or I tell you about and come in here and find it. So let's look at AwesomePrint. So when you click on AwesomePrint, it gives you all the details of this library. It gives you a pretty brief description. It tells you what versions of this library are around. It tells you some other things that that library depends on. So when we install AwesomePrint, if we were developing AwesomePrint, we would get some of these libraries. It tells you who the owners and authors are of the library. We're going to talk about gem files and install later. But over here, you get the homepage, the documentation. You can download the code for it itself. Usually the homepage is either going to be like a marketing website for it, or it's going to be GitHub, right? And the documentation will sometimes be GitHub, but sometimes will be like a wiki page. See, this goes to RubyDoc for it. This is the documentation, so it shows you how to use it, right? If we come back to the homepage for AwesomePrint, you'll see that the documentation is here as well, right? So when you're trying to figure out a new library in Ruby, that's usually a pretty good place to go. Go to Ruby Gems, type in the name of the library, look at the versions, and then look at that homepage and documentation link, because that's usually where the docs are going to be. And we're going to use a lot of different libraries along the way. when we get into filling into Rails, there's tons and tons and tons of libraries that we're going to be bringing in. If you're not sure, like, hey, what are the good libraries for things? There's a site called Ruby Toolbox. And Ruby Toolbox recently got a nice revamp because it was kind of dead for a while, and they kind of brought it back. What's nice about Ruby Toolbox is you can browse by category. So depending on the kind of thing you're looking to do, right? Is it something for communication? Is it a CSS thing? Is it dealing with data? Is it developer tools? Is it documentation? Is it graphics, right? It kind of breaks down the different libraries into categories. And the search here is pretty good. Like maybe you're looking for Google Maps, right? You can come in here and you can find Google Maps. Yeah. It's nice as it tells you when it was first released, the latest release. It tells you this library has got low activities in the last 3 years, and there's lots of open issues, right? And it hasn't been released in over a year. This one, the repository is gone, right? It hasn't been released in 3 years. So it tries to give you some sense of like the quality of the library. The best bet is to come do some searches and then like ask another developer like, hey, I need to do some Google Maps. Help me figure out which one of these is the good one.
So like in a situation like this, out of curiosity, oh, interesting. So it doesn't filter, like sort it by whether it's green or red?
Nope. Because it's not trying to tell you which is the right one. I mean, you can sort by this like score, right? Or search by the search rank, which is just like how closely did it match. There's no like one good way to score a library, because sometimes the best library doesn't score the highest on their things, right? What if it had low commit activity and it's a long-lived project that still gets updates, and it has a low number of issues, blah, blah, blah? That wouldn't get a very good score. But if it's been stable and working and no one's had to touch the code in 6 years and there's no problems with it, that's a pretty good library. Okay. So these things are meant as like general guides, right? How often have you used Yelp reviews to go to a restaurant and you're like, that was BS, right? Because they said like, oh, this restaurant's great, and it wasn't, or this restaurant sucks, and it turns out to be really good. It's kind of like that. It's just kind of a thumb in the air. How good is this? So don't try and live and die by those things. Just let it be a general guide. And as always, you just like ask other developers, hey, which do you think the best library is for X, Y, and Z? This just tries to give you a survey of what's out there and kind of a first place to go. So Ruby Gems and Ruby Toolbox are good places to start.
You said that Ruby Gems doesn't look at scope. So then, does it technically have a global scope then?
Gem, when you install a gem, it's available to your computer in every project you ever want.
So that's global.
There's only one scope and it's global.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because I was like...
Every project can use whatever gem you have installed. And when you install a gem, it's installed for everybody. Okay. So there's none of that like long yarn install. Once you install a gem, if another project is using the same version of that gem and you do install, I'll show you what the install process is here in a minute. It's like that because it's already installed. So you only ever have to install one copy of a gem because Ruby installs all the gems globally. So did anybody try gem install awesome print?
Yeah.
Cool. And did it say something like successfully installed?
No.
It was one gem installed.
I have like write permission.
Yeah, it says I have the same one. You know, rights permissions for the library.
If you type in which gem, what do you get?
Which gem?
Does it say
bin gem?
user bin gem?
Yeah. It's in the library.
Okay. If you type which Ruby, what does it say?
User bin Ruby.
Yeah.
User bin Ruby. Aha. Okay. So this is kind of the same issue. That you had, Tatiana, last week that we fixed. So
Yeah, something with the version.
And this will just be for the Windows folks.
Ah.
Sorry, no, this will be just for the Mac folks. This will be just for the Mac folks.
You should know. You should know. There's only 2.
And it's gonna
You
give
really
you a
laid back. Like, it was like, oh, it's not
thing.
me. I'm like, but.
I'm not gonna pay attention to it.
Let's see here.
You're the one with the issues.
Ruby.
It's always the max.
It's not always the
No.
Yeah.
Max.
It's usually the Windows folks with Ruby. But
Silent right now.
they changed something with how Ruby is installed with Homebrew, which makes it that the next time I have us do a Ruby class, we won't be installing it with Homebrew
Okay.
because they've made it more challenging to use. It was always very easy to use
Yeah.
Homebrew Ruby, and now they made it harder.
Did you want us to follow along?
No, I'm researching the exact thing I need you to type
Okay.
so that I can tell you what to type,
So,
and then we'll be okay.
so then is Ruby uninstalled through Homebrew on mine?
No, we installed it with Homebrew, but I fixed the issue with it.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to redo now for them what I've already done for
Oh,
you.
okay. Go.
Because we figured it out last week when you were having challenges.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And I didn't think we would have the challenges for you all, but I think we will.
Ah.
So let's install this real quick so you all can do. Juan and Mira, did you have any problems with gem install awesome print that say successfully installed? Say yep, see, cool. Yeah, I think next time I'm just going to have everybody use CH Ruby because it's just easier. Oh, come on, Ruby.
Did you download Bondor?
Yes, but we're gonna get to that today. What's going on, Ruby?
Time to wake up.
Come on, we need to talk about databases and ORMs today, Ruby. Come on, here we go. Cool. So, Mac folks who are not Tatiana.
Yay.
Because you've already done this. Where's the Ruby gang? You're gonna do this. So copy and paste that line into your terminal. So just Garrett and Anastasia. Copy and paste that line into your terminal. It should come back and do nothing.
Yeah.
Cool. Now close your terminal and start a new one. And if you type which Ruby, do you get something like this now? You should say like user local opt Ruby bin Ruby. Or does it still say user bin Ruby?
Yeah.
Yours still says user bin Ruby.
Let me get there. Yes.
Yours
It's the
does.
same. Yeah.
Okay, let me come take a look at. I'll come take a look at yours. What user is this?
This is the original. Awesome.
And I'll fix yours as well.
Thank you.
Oh, you're using Zisha. Perfect. This is even easier for you.
Yeah.
I'm the difficult child.
What's ZSD? I mean, that's just like a shell command, right?
Z shell. You're using a different kind of shell.
Oh, okay.
Wait, you didn't.
There's like something I don't know, a long time ago.
Oh, okay,
where it's
gotcha.
there.
Yeah, it was one of those things where he's like,
What cohort 2 or whatever you were in? 1?
One.
1?
Yeah, I'm like, what the fuck are we doing here?
I
I know what you're doing, but I don't get it.
just know that you were the first cohort.
what am I doing here?
Oh, gee.
I had a lot of those moments.
Yeah. My 2 in here moment.
Why did I do this?
Why did, yeah.
Why did I do this?
No one blame but me. You want shit?
Your cursor's so hard to see.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, why do you use the yellow and red? Is that something?
It's pretty.
I really like the combo.
You like
You
it?
can't see the cursor at all.
So it's 16. Let's comment all that out.
Isn't it hot here?
Yeah,
Yes.
I forgot to
It's
adjust
hot
the
for me.
AC.
Yes, girl.
Take
Save us.
off.
Just comfy walk.
That's what I
No,
was
it's
only wanting
easier
to
to
do. I'm like, you know, I wore the boots, you know, I'm
Yeah,
gonna be
yeah.
warm.
If
But
it's hot for me, then everybody's hot.
good, because that's how I am.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay, cool.
I'm not
Cool. Everybody set. All right. So we just installed this library called AwesomePrint. Let's take a look at this. So if you'd like your IRB to have all the fancy magic that my IRB has, execute this command in your terminal.
Go ahead with that next one, you said?
Yes, this command here.
Oh,
And then let me know if anything shows up in your VS Code for this file. It might be blank. It might have stuff in it. Is it blank? If it's blank, copy and paste this. If it has stuff in it, don't, and let me know.
So if it has no such file or directory, is that
Yeah,
considered
It's blank.
stuff or blank?
then it's blank, yeah.
Okay.
But did it open up a tab in VS Code?
yeah, it did.
Yeah, you got a tab and it's blank. And let's see where this is.
I didn't copy and paste it, so I don't know why.
No, you're missing the word code.
Gotcha.
See, it says code space.
Yep, gotcha.
Code space.
And then this is.
Mine read it as plant, plain text.
If not in code.
Yeah, and yours is already set, so you're fine.
Did you type that, Garrett? The code?
You don't have to do
Squiggly.
anything. And did yours come up blank?
Yeah, what
Okay.
does it do?
I don't know, I think that was the next.
So if your IRB RC is blank, I would suggest copy all of this. So here's a trick for copying. If you're like, I don't want to click and scroll, you can like highlight the first line or highlight anything, and then freely scroll to the bottom, hold down the Shift key and click again.
Nice.
All right, and that's an easy way of highlighting everything.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that always like makes me mad when I'm trying to like click and drag and scroll. So I will highlight like whatever. I'll just pick a thing, right? As long as something is selected, you can move to the bottom, right? And I'm just clicking, and wherever I'm clicking, that's how much I have selected. So go ahead and copy all of this and paste it into your IRB RC, and then close. Yeah. So let's talk.
Save and close?
Save and close that window. So we've just edited what we call a dot file. The dot files are files that live in your home directory, right? This is our home directory, /, and those files start with a dot. So you'll see things like .irbRc, .bash, configs, etc. The reason why these configuration files start with a dot is normally the ls command skips those. So a lot of programs use a configuration file that starts with a dot. So when you're listing your home directory, you don't see all of them there. For instance, if I come to my home directory and I do ls, I see this nice list. But if I do ls-a for all, oh my God, look at all those configuration files. Oh, it's full of configuration. right? So these are called dot files. And sometimes you'll see developers like, does he have a dot files? I know Joe Steele does. Joe Steele. Is it just J Steele? GitHub. Some developers will post their dot files. Like this guy. Let's just go look at his dot files, right? He just makes a repo and has all of his little dot files. So if you're like, hey, how do I configure Vim or some other tool? You can search name of tool space dot files, and maybe you'll find how to configure that tool. We are, bless you, we're configuring IRB. So this is the IRB config. The RC stands for config. Right? So hopefully now, if you come into IRB and you do something like names equals Gavin, Jason, Tony, if you've saved and closed that file and do IRB, hopefully you'll get something that looks like this. So if you went to IRB and do names equals %W and whatever names you want to put in, let me know if you get indented, colorized names. Yours might be hard to see because it might turn out to be yellow on yellow. We'll see.
Oh yeah.
We'll see, yeah.
It's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
Oh,
We'll see.
What's your idea?
See, we copied that whole big.
Yes, that mess, and then save and close the file. All of this. Right, and then you'll do an IRB and do something like this. Is that? Is it?
It fine? It doesn't look like that. It's just showing one.
It should be messing paradise.
Mine is.
Yeah, mine is like straight across white, yeah.
What?
It's not like
I love the joy.
that. Sound effects.
Right?
Everything amazes me about this stuff. Like that we do.
IRB.
I'm fighting and doing it again. I really. Oh, what's that?
Yeah.
Oh shit!
It was supposed to download in the for this.
I found you.
Found
It
it.
changes like the hamburger menu, so like the
Cool.
animations, right?
Love that.
It's in CSS.
Yeah, slap all these cool discoveries because I love stuff like that.
I'm gonna keep it to myself.
That's how you become a really good developer.
Yeah, that
Oh,
is.
you're not a team player?
Facts
We've been talking the opposite.
Facts, Garrett. Facts.
on facts.
Yeah.
But it's on the internet. I can find it.
Good luck searching.
So rude. So salty.
Can't find Jim IRB. This is.
Oh, you did.
Yeah.
Aw. I was like,
We will look at this in lab time, because I don't want to spend too much more time working on this.
Yeah.
So we'll look at it more in lab
But it
time.
was gone by like
It's not the most
even
important thing
Saturday.
for
I don't
tonight.
believe it because Mira was here and then
you guys exit.
her
Alright.
husband was here.
We'll figure this out later in lab time, but let's move on to talking about ActiveRecord. That's really what we're talking about
I
today.
want to, but yes, actually.
So we'll come back to this so you can have a nice, pretty terminal. Let's see if my changes made it. Yes, cool. Okay, so we're going to be working with the database that we did back in SQL time, right? So earlier in the week. And you remember we made a bunch of different tables. We made a movies and a ratings and an actors table. You also made a cast members table. I've since renamed this to roles. So if you still have this database, what we're going to do is this. So back in your plain terminal, not in IRB, do a PG CLI Suncoast Movies. And see if you get your PG CLI that comes up. PG CLI Suncoast Movies. So we're gonna just rename our cast members table to roles.
So you probably have to create the table. I mean,
No, you already had this table before.
Are you sure it's named
oh,
that?
because I did.
Yeah.
Isn't that what we called it? Suncoast
No.
Movies?
I think.
What did we
Maybe
call
they're
it?
Just movies.
Did we just do movies?
Yeah, this was like the.
Hmm.
No, not
Oh.
that way either.
We did.
Yes, movies. At least mine's just called movies.
Yeah.
Okay, it might just be called movies.
The example I think was.
Is it just movies?
Yeah. Almost.
Okay. So
I'm
see,
not getting a database for that either.
so if you do PG CLI movies, you get nothing.
Mm-hmm. Database movies does not exist.
And what about Suncoast Movies?
I feel
Well,
like.
definitely not that one.
So did you all not work through? Did you all not work through the
We
example?
Did, but I don't remember
Did
what
you
we
follow
called it.
along?
I definitely made up a lot of things.
But like
Okay.
we followed
Yeah.
the same like.
So let's just reset.
Okay.
Let's just reset.
Alright, cool.
So drop DB Suncoast Movies.
But if it doesn't exist,
Well then.
It'll be fine.
okay.
Right. Right? If someone tells you like throw out your soup and you don't have any soup, nothing to do, right? I don't have any soup. So let's drop DB Suncoast Movies. And then let's create DB Suncoast Movies.
If I want to like week 8 folder,
Mhm.
should I do just app?
my tabs.
No app. We're not using app anymore.
So we're gonna do that. So
Mine says
You know
not
how to
connected
use
database
it.
template.
So the Windows folks, every time you start up your computer,
we're not in there.
you have to come back to that how to
Oh
Postgres.
gosh.
So yeah, the Windows folks, unfortunately, before you can use
Yeah, we are back.
Postgres,
So right now,
Windows folks, you have to do this every time. You probably want to create yourself a little post-it note.
Yeah.
But the PC folks, you have to do this command. What's going on, font? You have to do this command every time. Every time you sit down to work on databases, you have to do this. I suggest you make yourself a note or pin this somewhere. Sudo service, I will paste this into Slack for you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Cool. So let's drop DB Suncoast Movies and create DB Suncoast Movies. Tatiana, is that what you're working on with Anastasia?
No, I'm just like,
Where's that?
I'm trying to get to that SDG command line where I can get access to all of my files.
The PG
It's like your
CLI?
prof- it's
I
like
can't
your-
like CD
It's
into.
like her
Come here.
profile change.
Come here.
Well, I definitely know the bash one that she's working in right now that you had done, but how do I get back to?
What are you trying to do?
I was trying to CD into SDG, everything like that, Unit 3, whatever
So
I'm.
if you switch tabs, you can see how her profile used to look.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We lost your profile somewhere.
Okay.
Alright, so.
I will recover that later.
Oh, okay.
In lab time.
So that's a thing.
Yeah, we can recover that later in,
All right.
in lab time.
So I can't follow along with this.
You can.
I
You totally
can't.
can.
It
Just
just
your
will look
prompt. Your
different.
prompt will look a little
And
different.
I can just continue in this.
Just follow along. Just do what I'm doing.
All right.
It's just not pretty.
Let's ride. Let's ride.
The way it used to.
Let's ride.
All right.
Because we're now an hour behind our schedule.
Reading.
Because we got a lot of stuff to cover today.
Yeah.
This is a big day of we're going to throw knowledge at you hardcore today.
Cool.
So brains on.
Brains on.
So drop your database and create your database.
Oh, mine says sudo app insert that link.
This.
I hate it though.
I supposed to put that
Yep.
after?
No, that's for
you do.
No, so you're gonna do,
So just
you already
create
do drop and
DB.
then create?
Yeah, well, I didn't use drop, but yeah.
Drop DB, sun,
Soup.
post.
I don't know. But
It
so,
just,
so you did create.
it's an empty line now after created.
No.
So
Oh,
then
you're
start,
fine.
yeah.
Yeah,
like,
Skater is just to the.
After it says created,
It's,
yeah, never
There you
mind.
go.
It's
You're
ORM.
yeah.
Cool. Now, let's go create our tables again. We'll just start from clean, PG, CLI, Suncoast, movies. And you should get a prompt, something like this, maybe a little different. Yours will say something different here, but it should say Suncoast, at least say Suncoast Movies arrow.
Yeah.
And it's pseudo service Postgres.
You don't have to do that, only the Windows friends have to do that
No
statement.
wonder, okay.
Oh, that's just for our Windows friends.
Okay.
The Mac friends don't have to do that.
Yay.
So if you do PG CLI to get back into our database interface, now we're talking to the database, right?
Yes.
This is where you did all your queries and your create tables and blah, 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 right? Let's go and create our tables. So let's recreate our movies table. So I'm gonna copy this. You're definitely 1000% gonna wanna follow along with this today. This is the day to follow along. So let's create our movies. Let me know if you were not able to create the movies. Did you not go into PG CLI? You did not do PG CLI. PG CLI. Nope.
I did.
See, did you? You did. So you said copy. You need to turn multi-line on. Now we can. There we go.
Cool.
Yeah, it didn't look like you had PG CLI going, but you did, just not multi-line. Cool. Did everybody else movies okay? Yes, 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 yes. Cool. Create the ratings table. Then do the alter table statement. Yes, I know it's destructive. Create the actors table. Finally, create the roles table.
Oh, as in if we don't have the actors one.
Yeah, you don't have anything because we just zapped our database and just started over.
Oh, as in if it wasn't updated on the actual documents. I don't have the actors part.
This should still be here.
Oh, sorry, and then I added it without looking at it.
Cool. And then the last one's just say create table roles.
Yes.
Cool. If this still
Cast members.
yeah, refresh the page so it says create table roles.
Oh.
So then when I drop the cast members.
You can if you'd like. It won't make any difference to us here if you have an extra table in there. So you can do create table roles.
Does acknowledge multiple commands like say just copy and paste the whole? Or...
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. Everybody got their database up to date? Cool. Okay. So we saw earlier that we installed a gem. Right? We talked about installing the awesome print gem. Right? We had awesome print. We're going to be using a lot of libraries in our Ruby code. And like NPM and Yarn, Ruby has one that we call Bundler. Bundler is the main package manager for Ruby. Right? It's like NPM or Yarn, but for JavaScript. So we need to have packages in our Ruby code. We need something to manage all of that, right? Our Ruby programs are going to require more than one library, just like we had Axios and React DOM and React Router and blah, 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 blah. In JavaScript, we're going to have the same kinds of things in Ruby. We're going to add multiple libraries to our Ruby code so that Ruby can do more for us. Okay? The way we do this is with a tool called Bundler. And there's some links in here if you want to go read Bundler later. For now, we're going to be using Bundler in what we call inline mode. Later on, when we get to Rails, we're going to be using Bundler in its typical mode by using what's called a gem file. Okay, so I just want you to hear the gem file name now and know that we're using a tool called Bundler. So in whatever directory you want to keep your code for this week, right? If you make a week 8 directory, or you've got a Ruby folder, or wherever you're keeping your code, let's all make a movies RB file. So we can leave PGCLI for now, right? And then whatever, unit 3, week 8, I don't care, however you like to organize your code. Let's make a movies.rb file by doing code space movies RB in whatever directory you like. You don't have to do mine. You don't have to say unit 3, week 8, in whatever organizational style you're doing, but somewhere inside your SDG folder, in some hierarchy of organization, let's make a movies.rb file. When you do this, you should get a blank file. You don't have to copy this exactly, but somewhere inside of your SDG folder, wherever you're keeping unit 3 work, week 8 work, you can make it called database folder, whatever it is.
So
Most people do SDG unit 3, week 8. Doesn't matter.
that'll be weird for me though, it's mine.
Yeah, you just won't see it printed. That's all.
Okay.
You just won't see the folder name in your terminal, but everything else is working.
So instead of code dot, we use code and file name.
And the name of the file, yes, because we don't have a project, we don't have app or Rails yet. We're just editing a single file. So rather than open up an entire folder of files, we're opening up a single file for movies.rb.
It's cool that it does touch at the same time.
Yeah, it actually doesn't until the first time you save. So see how the file's unsaved?
Yeah.
If I list this directory, there's nothing.
Gotcha.
But the first time I hit save, there's the file.
Oh, nice.
So it does not create the file until the first time we save.
That's awesome.
So let's copy this code here. And let's paste it into our Ruby file. And then let's talk about what this does. So your movies.rb file should look something like this. You have movies.rb, and you should have this. So let's talk about what each of these lines does. So here's a new syntax, and I don't think, did the colons cover require? Did you all talk about see require in the colons? Did it go through? I don't, probably not. Did it walk you through what require means? Probably
No.
not, because I think that's further in the colons.
Is it similar to React?
No. So require in Ruby is like import in JavaScript. So require in Ruby is the same thing kind of the same thing that import does in JavaScript. It tells Ruby, from this other library, I would like to start using this code. Like in JavaScript, we say import Axios, and now we can use the Axios library. Right? Without saying import Axios in JavaScript, we can't start using Axios. In Ruby, we can't start using bundler until we require bundler. So as soon as Ruby sees require bundler, it says, aha, bundler must be a library, and I'm going to require that so I can use the bundler code. This block of code is our gem file. It's telling us that we're going to use gems from Ruby gems, right? That's the main source of Ruby gems. And here we're going to use two different libraries. We're telling Ruby, please use the PG gem, and please use the ActiveRecord gem. So if you saw two gems and you weren't sure what they would do, where would you go to find out?
Which gem?
Yeah, well, how would you be like, Gavin told me to do gem PG, and I don't know what the heck that is. You could probably guess what it is.
Go to rubygems.org. and see.
Yeah, go to rubygems.org and search for it, right? So if we go to rubygems.org, you don't have to do this unless you want to, and type PG, you'd be like, oh, what's the PG?
That's awesome.
PG is the Ruby interface to Postgres, right? And we can go to the home page for it and learn what the PG gem does. Well, it turns out the PG is the Ruby interface for using the Postgres database. Cool. Hey, Gavin, you also told us to install ActiveRecord. What the heck is ActiveRecord? Hey, databases on Rails. Build a persistent model by mapping databases to Ruby classes. Strong conventions for associations, validations, aggregations, migrations, and testing. All right, so we said that this week we're going to be talking about ORMs. ORM stands for Object Relational Mapping. ORM. You're going to get asked that on an interview. I can guarantee it. Someone's going to be like, what's an ORM? It's Object Relational Mapping, or mapper, mapping or mapper. Right? It's what lets us have databases, tables in the database, and objects and classes in our code. Right? We said when we were teaching you SQL that we're probably not going to write a lot of SQL code. Right? We're going to be writing Ruby code that via some magic is going to get translated into SQL code for us. That's the purpose of an ORM. The ORM we're using is called ActiveRecord. And ActiveRecord is one of many libraries that makes up Rails. Right? So this is the first dive into Rails. All we're getting from the Rails framework is the database part. So we're borrowing from Rails ActiveRecord. It's probably one of the neatest, coolest parts of Rails, and we're going to get to use it first before we dive into Rails later this week. Any question?
I was wondering about, so essentially, just wanted to clarify, we were saying that the ORMs allow us to use databases, or we're essentially just, you're saying that it essentially take the Ruby, turns it into SQL?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Or-
Yep. We're going to be writing Ruby instead of writing SQL. And you're going to see that in like 5 minutes. All right, so we're using the ActiveRecord library. So this set here says, inside this gem file, it says, please go to Ruby Gems to get your official gems. Please get me the library PG. That's for Postgres. And then please get me ActiveRecord, which is our ORM. It's not the only ORM for Ruby. There are many. This is the one that comes with Rails. Right? It's part of the Rails library. We're teaching you Rails, so we're going to be using the Rails ORM. But there are several other alternatives. Finally, after we told the gem file, these are all the libraries we're going to use, we're going to tell Ruby, please require ActiveRecord. Now we can start using the ActiveRecord library. Here's a thing that bothers me. Notice that this is ActiveRecord without an underscore. This is ActiveRecord with an underscore. Consistency.
Right.
They called the gem this, but the library is actually called that. Boo.
I would assume they're two different things.
They are not. They are not. It's active_record when you require it, and it's ActiveRecord without the underscore when it's the gem. I wish they would fix that, but they haven't. Boo.
Boo.
Boom. Cool. So now that we have this library, what the heck can we do with it? Right? We said we have this ORM. The next thing we have to do is configure ActiveRecord to talk to our database. So we're going to add 2 more lines of code to our output. The first line we're going to add is this line. This line, here, let me document these. Tell Ruby we are going to use bundler. Define which libraries to use. Not to sue. Use the official source. Ruby gems. Use Postgres library. Use ActiveRecord ORM. Load up that sweet ActiveRecord code. This line says when ActiveRecord needs to log something, like what SQL it's generating, send it to standard output, our terminal. So this line here, I'll update the notes with this so you don't have to type all of it. This line here says, hey, ActiveRecord, anytime you need to log something, you want to make some details about what you're doing, please put it in my terminal so I can see what you're doing. This is what's going to let us peek at the SQL that ActiveRecord is generating for us, and you'll see all the code we don't have to write. The next thing we need to do is tell ActiveRecord to establish a connection to our database. Hey, ActiveRecord, establish a connection to our database. And you'll notice inside of these parentheses, this kind of looks like what kind of thing in Ruby? It looks like a hash, right? So you'll notice that what's missing are the braces. Did Koan talk about how if you have a function that takes a hash, you can leave the hash marks out for the last argument? So if you have a method, in this case, establish connection, and the very last argument is a hash, then you don't have to include the braces, so Rubyists often don't. And then these is a hash with what kind of key? When we see this syntax, did the koans talk about this kind of key? Yeah, what does that look like?
Is it
You almost had the first letter, you kind of said
Symbol.
These are symbols, right? We saw this the other day. Person is a hash whose name is Gavin, right? And his salary is 42, right? We talked about the fact that we use terms for keys so often that we could use symbols instead, right? Part of the koans you studied symbols, pretty sure, yeah. So this is kind of the same thing, but now our keys are symbols. Pretty typically for a Rubyist, when they're making a hash, they're not going to use strings as the keys, they're going to use symbols for a number of reasons. They're more memory efficient, they're easier, etc. You'll notice that when AwesomePrint printed my hash, it did this way, because when you have a when you have a symbol as your key, you don't have to use the rocket format. You can do this. What does this really look like? What language? Yeah. It's kind of the JavaScript-y kind of syntax. So anytime you see something that looks like a hash, something colon value, comma, something colon value, we're talking hashes. So what this says is establish connection needs a hash, which adapter, Postgres, which database, Suncoast Movies. At this point, we are connected to our database. Right now, we've connected Ruby and our database together. But we can't do anything yet. We need to teach Ruby that there are some tables in our database. Let's just define this first one. Let's add this code to the end of our Ruby file. Class movie less than ActiveRecord : base. What did we say this was in a class? Remember good dog and dog?
Goody dog.
Yeah, remember goody dog and dog?
Belong to?
Say it again.
Belong to?
Yeah, kind of. Not quite belongs to.
Inherent?
Inherits is a kind of. Yeah. You're very close with the belongs to. Yeah, but it's kind of. So we're saying that movie is a kind of active record. Right? What kind of tables did we have in our database? What were the names of the tables we just created?
Oh, roles, actors,
Yep.
movies.
Movies.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between movies and this?
Oh.
Movies and what's this word?
Movie.
What's the name of the table?
Movies.
Movies. How are those two things related? One is the of the other. Go back to English
Singular.
class.
Singular.
Singular and plural. As Rubyists, we're always, this is a rule of the conventions of Ruby. You don't have to do it, but the conventions of Ruby is that our table names are always going to be plural. People, things, cars, movies, actors, roles. Our classes are always going to be singular. Movie, car, person, salary, right? So if we were doing a database about human beings, our table would be people, that would be the name of our table, and our class would be person. Tables are plural, classes are singular. It's a super important convention. We're going to see why in a second. Let's save this movies RB and run it. So in your terminal, you can do the side-by-side thing or not. Let's run movies.rb. It might take a hot second to run because what's happening is it might need to install Postgres and ActiveRecord, but it should come back and do nothing. So if your Ruby RB looks like this, and I'll paste this in Slack for anybody who's trying to catch up. If your Ruby looks like this, and you run it, did anybody come back and get an error? Did everybody get nothing? Nothing. Cool. So, it's because we haven't asked Ruby to do anything yet. Let's do this. Let's p print for the debugger print movie dot all. So I want to put some comments in here. Debug print all the movies. Yeah, thanks, Prettier. Yeah, I have the Ruby Prettier in my terminal. So we're gonna p print all the movies. So you see here we're calling movie the class dot all. We're asking the movie class, please give me all of the movies. Let's run this now. And if you run it, do you get something like this?
Yes.
So, this seems pretty familiar right here.
Yes.
Select movies.star from movies. That looks like SQL. Did anybody not get this?
Is it case sensitive?
Yes,
Okay.
it's case sensitive. The code is, so capital M for movies.
Yes.
So all Ruby classes start with a capital.
Right.
I don't think. I don't get anything coming back. I just get review. Nothing.
What's in your code? What's in your code?
And then actually, just install the stuff without the comments.
Gavin, issue. Because you did what I did.
Yeah. So something should be. And I have the table, everything, all that.
Where do you look at mine? That's like princess.
Yours run?
No.
No, it didn't.
You did not save the file.
Oh, well, that's good, yeah.
Then there's the X. Boom.
All right.
Cool.
Oh, that's great.
Yay! So did everybody see? So in this case, what did we ask Ruby to do? We asked the movie class to show us all the movies, right? So movie is our class. Because movie knows that it's an active record, do you see how it made the assumption that we're talking about the movies class? That's that convention. Class name singular, it's going to look for the plural table name in our database, right? This is why creating the table names is so important.
Is there a reason why you can't just use require every time you're trying to get some information?
Well, require is requiring code.
Oh.
Now we're trying to get data.
Okay.
So require says, hey, my Ruby world, there's a library called ActiveRecord. I want to snag all of that code,
Okay.
right? It would be terrible for us to have to write all of this code, so we're just using David Heinemeier Hanssen's brilliance, who wrote Rails, say like, you figured all this shit out.
Yeah.
You write that code for me. That's what require does. But now that we have ActiveRecord in our world, just like we had Axios in our world, we could do APIs. Now we have ActiveRecord in our world, we can talk databases. Because we named our table movies, and we created our class movie capital, ActiveRecord's like, I will go find out if there's a movies table, and if there is, I will give you access to it, right? Movie ActiveRecord base, movie.all. Let's debug print how many movies. I'll get you. We can ask the movie class to count how many movies there are. Now we can look at the query that it generated for us. Select count star from movies. Right? All I asked was, movie class, how many of there are you? How many movies are in our database right now? 0. Let's go put some movies in our database. Let's go back into PG CLI temporarily. And let's go put some movies in our database. If you scroll up a little bit in the notes, there's a link right here, step 2, see this lesson. This is where our insert into movies was. So we can grab this from that other lesson. I'll put it in Slack too, how's that? That way you all don't have to go grab it. Let's just insert some movies into our database. So we have some. Cool. So PG CLI, Suncoast movies, and then copy pasta that into your PG CLI. So we've inserted some movies. Then if we leave PG CLI and we run our Ruby code again, hey, now that when we print all those movies, look what we've got. We've got a whole bunch of movies. And now it says we have 14 movies in our database. Let me know if y'all get to here.
So click that lesson 1. And then
Yeah, I also pasted them right into, I pasted them right into Slack for y'all. So you don't have to go chasing that other lesson.
And we're just copying
You can just copy and paste this.
all the inserts.
Yeah, all the inserts, paste them into PG CLI. And it should say insert, 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 insert.
And then you just quit.
Then you quit PG, yeah, you quit PG CLI. Oh, you need,
And then we're gonna get back into.
you need to go into PG CLI, Suncoast.
Great.
I don't know why.
And then we can paste.
And
No.
I know.
Everyone's never had this issue before.
what was it? P got count for
Yeah, let me go back to that.
Cool, there we go.
Yep, movie dot count.
Now we
Yes.
go and do
So you're
Movie
going
movies.
to.
you put this into this one here.
Oh. It's not found, so maybe we can just look first.
Ruby, I forgot.
Where's your Ruby diaries? That's it? Yeah. You insert it all.
Cool. There you go. You have 13 movies. That's fine. Cool. Right. So now, when we said, hey, movie.all, we got back. What does this look like in Ruby? What's that symbol normally mean?
A comment out?
Yeah. No, the one to the left. This one here. The one.
The
bracket.
An array.
An array. Right. So we got back an array of movies. And how many movies are in our database? Some of you have 13. Some of you have about 14 movies.
14.
Right? So in Ruby, if we wanted to know, hey, how many movies are there? We wouldn't do select count star from movies. We would just say, hey, movie, go count yourself.
Cool.
How many are there? What if we wanted to know, what if we wanted to find a movie by its title? Let's go find a movie by its title. If we were doing SQL, we might do something like this. Select star from movies where title equals, and let's look for The Lost World. Right? This is probably what you did earlier last week to go like find a movie by a title. In Ruby, let's do this. Movie class, please find one movie by, what kind of thing does this represent in Ruby? What kind of data? It's a hash. What's the key? What's this? Yeah, and it says title. And the value is the thing we're looking for. So find by with ActiveRecord says, you're going to give me a hash. Whatever the key is, that's the column in the table I want you to go hunting with. And the value is what I want you to hunt.
Is the value case sensitive?
It is, because SQL is case sensitive. Right? Please find me a movie, find one movie by the title. What title you're looking for? The Lost World. This is going to return us one of two things. It's going to return us a movie object, right, whose class is movie, kind of like we had the dog class, so we had Riley equals and Roscoe equals. This is going to find us one movie from the database and put it in the movie variable. So let's print what's in the movie variable. And I'm going to do a little bit of puts. Found a movie colon, just so we can have a little bit of output. If we run this now, aha, found a movie. So this looks kind of like when we were doing the dog class, we had hash mark dog, and we had the attributes of that object. Remember that? We had like the name and the age of the dog. What kind of object is this movie object?
An ID?
Nope, just say what my finger's pointing at.
Movie.
Movie. It's a movie. The variable movie is kind.
So that's what it's the variable movie.
Yeah. What kind of, is it a number? Is movie a number?
Oh, it's,
Yes or no?
no,
No.
it's text.
It's a, no, it is a,
Simple.
just say the word. Just say the word. It's a movie. It's a movie. The movie variable has a movie inside of it. Where did that movie come from? We found it in the
Table.
table, in the database. Yep.
Oh,
We ask the movie class to find one movie by searching for the title of The Lost World. And we got back one movie. What's the ID of that movie?
One.
What's the title of that movie?
The Lost World.
What's the primary director of that movie?
Steven Spielberg.
When was it released?
1997.
The genre is,
Sci-fi.
and it has no rating, right? So what if we just wanted just the title of the movie? We could print the movie's title. We could say movie.title. Right? Remember the other day when we were doing classes, we did class, dog, adder, accessor, name, and age, and what do we say, sound. Right? Remember this class, dog? And then we could say something like Riley equals a new dog, and print Riley's age. Right? This was from our Ruby code class lecture from last week. We made a dog and we gave it accessors. What did we not have in this movie class?
ActiveRecord.
You know?
Oh.
What's different between class movie and class dog?
Yeah, rating.
It doesn't have
Mm.
initializers?
Neither of them have initializers. What's different between this class and this class? Name the things you see.
What?
One has like
I thought those were initializers, so where's this?
These are accessors.
Oh.
These are accessors.
Okay.
So one has
As,
adder accessor
yeah,
and one does not.
yeah,
One has
reference to where it's inheriting from.
and one does not. So you notice that I could do Riley.age because I had the accessors. Movie.title. I didn't put any accessors here. Where do you think Ruby learned that it has an ID, a title, a director, a year release, a genre, and a rating?
From the active record that it's in.
Yeah. So ActiveRecord can look at your table structure, your schema, and learn all the accessors it has to add. So we didn't have to say for ActiveRecord, we didn't have to say right up here in our movie class, no need to teach Ruby about the columns in our table, since Ruby will learn that on its own. So Ruby is automatically going to give you accessors for every column in your table. ActiveRecord is smart enough to say, if you tell me class movie derives from ActiveRecord base, the second Ruby sees that, second ActiveRecord sees that, it's going to say, I expect there to be a movies table, and I'm going to go and ask Postgres, hey Postgres, please describe the movies table to me. What columns do you have? And it's going to learn that a movie has an ID, and a title, and a director, and a year released, and a genre, and a rating ID automatically.
Could you repeat again? You said Ruby automatically gives MLT.
ActiveRecord, when you say class movie derives from ActiveRecord, a couple things, magic things are going to happen. The movie class is going to demand there be a table called movies, plural. If this was car, there better be a cars table. If this was person, there better be a people table. Right? Whatever this name is here, we're going to look for the same table name plural in the database. And as soon as we define this class, ActiveRecord is going to take a second and go ask Postgres, hey, do you have a plural table name version of this name I've got here? Movie, car, person, book, etc. And if Postgres says yes, ActiveRecord is going to say, cool, please tell me all the columns that are found in that table. Right? Postgres is going to say, cool, I've got a movies table, and it's got an ID, a title, a primary director, a year released, a genre, and a rating ID. And now our movie class is automatically going to have accessors for every one of those columns. So we can say, find this movie by this title and print the movie's title, we should get back The Lost World. Right? Should get back The Lost World.
What's base?
Say that. Oh, base. There's going to be different kinds of things. This is the base class of ActiveRecord. We're saying that movie is a kind of ActiveRecord. Base just means like the lowest level. So ActiveRecord base is the parent of everything else. We're going to build on top of this base, right? Like you make a foundation, the base of something. That's what the base stands for. So if instead of asking for the movie title, I ask for the movie genre, what should be printed here? Found a movie. Sci-fi. Yeah, because it's a sci-fi movie. So I can ask, or I can make a string now. I can say puts found the movie.title, which is a movie.genre movie that was released in movie.year released by the director, movie.primary director. I'll paste this so you don't have to type it. Oh, I typed directory. I typed the word directory so much that my finger just types it.
Oh, sure.
Hey, look. Found the movie The Lost World, which is a sci-fi movie that was released in 1997 by the director Steven Spielberg. Right? So we are typing Ruby code, but we're really working with the database. We ask Ruby to please find me a movie whose title is The Lost World, right? And then we put the result of that into a variable. I don't have to call it movie. I could call it found movie, but then I have to be consistent here, right? Whatever I call this variable, tacos, right? I just have to be consistent. So since I'm looking for a movie, I might as well call the variable movie. Right? So what if instead of The Lost World, we searched for, what's another short one in here? Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I'll get you just in a second. So what if we search for Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy instead of The Lost World? If we do that, aha! Found the movie Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is a sci-fi movie that was released in 2005 by director Garth Jennings. Right? I don't know about you, but I think this is a little bit easier to work than the SQL code. Cool. What was your question, Anastasia?
I was just asking for like good practice to name things. If it's confusing that movie and movies showing up everywhere, can you just name them something totally different instead of singular plural?
Yeah, some people might say like result.
Okay.
Right? So then I just have to say result title, result genre, result year released, result primary director.
And you can do that for every table.
Yeah, this has to say movie, but you can call your variable whatever you want.
Okay.
Cool. So what if instead of we wanted to find one movie, what if we wanted to find all the movies that satisfied a certain condition? What if we wanted all of the science fiction movies? So maybe we would say movie.where the genre is sci-fi. So this would be like select star from movies where genre equals sci-fi. But there's one hitch. This is going to return all the movies, where this just returns the first one. If we were really careful looking, you would see that this query has a limit of one record. Find by only returns one record. Find by only returns one record, the first one found. Where returns all the matching records. So movie.where, genre is sci-fi, is going to return multiple results. Right? It's going to return multiple records. 0 or more records. Right? So results has 0 or more objects. Results is going to be a collection of 0 or more objects. Right? If there were no matches, we'd have 0 elements in that collection, that array. If there was one movie whose genre is sci-fi, we would have one record in that, one movie object in that collection. If there were 100 movies whose genre were sci-fi, we'd have 100 movie objects in that collection. What method did we learn when we talked about enumerals that lets us walk through all of the elements in an array? You probably also had it in the about arrays.
For each.
Yeah, but in Ruby we call that. In Ruby it's for each in JavaScript, but in Ruby we just call it plain old each. Yeah, just each. So we can say results dot each do. Let's call this one movie. And I'll paste this code at the end if you want to catch up. So since we have a collection of movies, we want to walk through all the movies. So inside of here, what we can say is we can puts, and I'm just gonna say puts found the movie one movie dot title. Since where is very similar to find by, but it returns multiple things, we get back an array. It's not actually an array, but we can treat it like an array. It's actually an active record relation, but that's a detail that doesn't matter. We're saying results each, please go through all the results and print what movie we found. Let's say found the sci-fi movie, one movie title. And I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna, up here, I'm gonna put a whole bunch of new lines like this. I'm gonna do it this way. 5 times puts. Some nice blank lines. Right, because our output's getting a little jumbled. So 5 times I'm just gonna puts. That'll give me some nice 5 blank lines. Then we're gonna go look in the database for all the movies where the genre is sci-fi, and we're gonna get back an array of those. And now we can loop through them in different ways. So let's see what this looks like. Hey, how many movies did we find? 2, right? The Lost World and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Those are the 2 sci-fi movies that are in our database. What if I wanted to find the movies of a genre that the user told me? How might I do that? Gets, very good. So what if instead of this, here, let me copy pasta this in, so if anybody who's trying to follow along can catch up. If you're trying to follow along.
Question about when it was the limit for 1.
Yes.
But there was more than one sci-fi film, so how did that do that?
So if instead of saying where, we said find by, this line 58 would only find the very first sci-fi movie.
Okay.
So find by goes hunting for one, and as soon as it finds ones, we're out of here. Where is going to go through the whole table, picking up all of the movies whose sci-fi is the genre. And then this time there's only 2.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you're looking for multiple things, you're using where. If you're looking for one thing, you're using find by. Okay. So if we wanted to ask the user, maybe we'll say something like puts, what genre would you like me to find? And maybe we'll say something like user's favorite genre equals guess.chomp. Right? So instead of this being a hard-coded string, by hard-coded you mean typed directly into the source code, what do you think I want to put right here? Yeah, so I do an empty string, I'll find all the movies that have no genres. If I want this to now have the user tell me what genre to put in, what do you think goes in this spot in the hash?
User's favorite.
Yeah, the user's favorite. Exactly, the input from the user that we put in the variable called user's favorite genre. So here
Right.
we're asking for the user's favorite genre, and then on the right-hand side of this hash, we're saying, please get me all of the movies where the genre is whatever the user told me. Right? And then if we don't want to hard code the sci-fi down here, we can say found the user's favorite genre movie. Right? So now we're not hard coded for sci-fi. If we run this, what genre do we want to look for? Let's look for fantasy. Oops.
Or
I mistyped something somewhere. User's favorite genre. Oh, I mistyped it down here. I misspelled favorite. Let's do this again. Let's look for fantasy. Aha! Found a whole bunch. Right? If we do this again and we type sci-fi, we found 2. What if we type comedy? Notice I didn't get any output, right? That's kind of a bad user experience. Let's increase the user experience a little bit and say something like this. If, what we want to put here is, there were no results. If there was nothing matching, you want to say put there are no user favorite genre movies in our database. Here what we can say is if the results, and we can do this a couple ways. We can say if the results length is 0. This is one way of doing it. The other way we could do it is we could say if the results are empty, question mark. Right? This is using Ruby's ability to have like English style syntax. Right? JavaScript we have to do this, but in Ruby, this is a slightly nicer syntax. If the results are empty, if there are no movies whose genre is comedy, fantasy, sci-fi, whatever we typed, then show this. So as a Rubyist, we tend to write this. If the results are empty, say there are no so-and-so movies in our database. Otherwise, let's print there are users favorite genre dot count movies in our database. Question?
I'm just wondering if all of this code goes within the class movie?
No,
Okay.
it goes after it.
Okay.
So the class movie is pretty much blank. All of this goes outside of that. This just tells ActiveRecord
To bind.
Yeah, to bind the movie singular class to the movies plural table, which gives us movie.all, movie.count, movie.findby, movie.where.
Cool.
Right? So now if we say our results are movie where this is true, if the results are empty, we'll print, hey, there are no blah movies in our database. Otherwise, let's print there are user favorite, results movies in our database. Yeah, sorry, results count.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah, call me out. There are results count movies in our database, right? If the results are empty, say there are no sci-fi movies. Otherwise, say there are 10, 3, 2 movies in our database. And then maybe what we want to do is move this code into that else, right? No reason to try and print them if there aren't any. So if the results are empty, when we ask the database, then say there are no comedy movies in our database. Otherwise, print how many there are, and then print them. So let's try this again. And I'm going to get rid of this up here. I'm going to comment this out because I don't want the all movies printing out anymore. Hey, what genre do you want me to find? Let's do sci-fi. There are 2 movies in our database, and this is what they are. Let's do comedy. There are no comedy movies in our database. Why? Because when we did this select, when we did this where clause, the results were empty. So if this comes back and says, hey, whatever you told me, I couldn't find any of those, it was empty.
What's the what you're writing in the terminal to run this? Is it Ruby?
Ruby and the name of the Ruby script. Ruby and the name of our Ruby code file. And that will run this. What genre?
I'm in
Fantasy.
PG a lot. That's
Yeah. Hey, there are 9 fantasy movies in our database. Cool. So this is querying the database. Let's talk about updating the database.
Can we have 5 minutes break?
Yeah, well, we're gonna break in 5 minutes, and then we're gonna be done, and we're gonna come back at 3. So let's just do one last thing, and then we're gonna break for lunch because it's 12. So let's talk about changing the database. This is the last thing you need so you can start looking at your homework. What if we realized that Howl's Moving Castle, the year for that was wrong? The year for this movie was wrong. We need to fix it, right? So this is going to require us to do 3 things. It's going to require us to find the movie, change one of its attributes, and save the movie. So we've already seen how to find the movie. Right? Movie dot, I'm looking for one movie, so I'm going to use I'm looking for one movie. I'm going to use what movie dot find by. I'm looking for one movie. I'm going to use movie dot find by. And inside of here goes the hash of what I'm looking for. So I'm looking for Howl's Moving Castle, which is the movie's title. And I know the name of the movie I'm searching for. Change the movie's year released. So I can ask for the year released. I can change it. Let's make up that it came out in 1987. Save the change to the database. Result.save. So this finds the movie in the database. It asks what title am I looking for? I'm looking for Howl's Moving Castle. If result.yearReleased is the year the movie was released, I can change that to whatever I like. This could even be a formula. This would increment the year released by 1. Right? Whatever's inside of that movie's year released, add 1 to it, put that back into the year released. Or let's just make it 1987. right? So anything, any kind of math we can do in Ruby, we can do here. And then we're going to save that record back into the database. Since result is a movie object, it knows how to change one of the columns and how to save itself back into the database. Let's see what that looks like.
So we don't need to use operator.
So here's the bit of code where it went looking for Howl's Moving Castle. Select movie star from movies, where the movie title is $1, limit $2. So we're going to talk about this later, but the $1 and the $2 mean the first thing here, look for the title, Howl's Moving Castle, limit 1 row. So this is the SQL code that happened when we were looking for Howl's Moving Castle. Right here, let me make it smaller. Make it a little bigger. How about there? We're going to update the movies, set the year released equal to something, where movies ID equals something. Which ID is it? It's ID 14. We didn't have to worry about that. I didn't even know what ID Howl's Moving Castle was. How does Ruby know? Well, one of the attributes of a movie is its... How does Ruby know what ID to look for? Because find by returned one movie. What are the attributes of a movie? Title and ID and year released. So result knows what ID it is. So I'm not messing with IDs anymore. I can just find the objects that I need. I can find the movie that I need by its title. I can set, using Ruby, its year released, and tell ActiveRecord, you go figure out how to make the update statement for this. You know the ID of the movie. It's 14. Ruby figured that out. It knows how to write SQL for me. So it said, well, you asked me to change the year release, so I'll say update movie set year released equal to, what did we change the year release to? 1987. For which movie? Where ID equals 14. Ruby is so smart. What's missing this time? What used to be between here just a second ago? Yeah. What kind of statement was here?
Don't remember. Yeah, me neither.
Let's change the movie title again. Let's 1900. What's between the begin and purple statements?
Oh, and the D.
Yeah, what kind of statement?
Oh, it's like, it's just execution time.
Yeah. So between the purples, what kind of SQL statement is this?
Oh, it's an alter table.
Nope.
Update.
Yeah, it's an update statement. Because what had to change? What did we change?
The row.
The year released. So in order to change the year released, we had to write an update statement. Remember the homework that you did to change all those, change James, blah, change the department, whatever it was, right? And you had to write update, departments, set, blah equals to blah, where blah, right? We're not writing that anymore. We're asking Ruby to find that database, to find that record. We're changing the year released, and we're saving it. Ruby wrote this update statement for us. Why did it write an update statement? Because Howl's Moving Castle's year was not 1900, so it knew it had to save it.
So if the table did have it stating that it was 1900, would it return back an error, or would
No.
it just
Yeah.
override it with the same?
Ah, right. So everybody remember what's between the purple lines. What's between the purple lines?
Update statement.
An update statement, an SQL. So what do you think Howl's Moving Castle year released is right now if I look into the database?
1900.
1900. If I run this again, we're going to be changing Howl's year from
1900
to,
1900.
Ruby says, I got you, fam. That's nothing. Ruby is so smart that if it's not actually going to need to do an update, it won't do the update. So if it's changing the year release from 1900 to 1900, Ruby sees that as nothing to do. Right? If I make this 1901, it does have to do an update statement. But you'll notice that I didn't have to do anything with the where ID equals, because Ruby knows this is a movie, and I'm going to change that movie's year release to 1901, and I want to save that movie back into the database. So there's nothing SQL in this entire file, right? We could have just taught you this, and Ruby would have written the SQL for you. We could have pretended like there was this magic thing called a database, and this is how you talk to it, right? And then maybe later on reveal to you, there's this thing called SQL, right? And that's how Ruby is doing all this magic, right? But the .NET folks are doing the same thing using their .NET language for how they talk to databases, right? So the SQL is like the common language between the two.
So I was trying to follow along, and if there's something in your code, does it override, like I'm only getting the result for title of Lost World, limit 1, and that's what it keeps bringing up to me after I've done all these other changes. So I'm looking up back at the movie.findby, and I think it's just referring to that. Oh, I didn't update the movie.
Yeah, I just posted my latest into Slack.
Okay.
So you feel free to compare what's in here.
But we're just
to what you've
changing the
got.
Lost World back to this new movie that was in fantasy, and that's what you changed.
Yes.
Okay. Should get
Cool.
Oh, and that's what you have to do for each result that you want to look at?
Yep. So if you want to loop through the results, then we're doing a where, because this finds multiples. And then here, we're going through all of the movies.
Okay.
So all of these bits are what you need for your homework tonight. So for your homework tonight, you are going to be creating a new database for going on a safari to go look at animals.
What about
Yay.
Windows folks?
They're doing the same homework.
But we don't have stuff, right?
No.
Oh.
Not Safari the database. Safari like the African safari, where animals are. No.
Oh, we all own Safari, so we're here with the.
You're going to the zoo.
Yeah. we've been cooped up here too long.
Oh, it's not in here yet. We didn't in here yet. So. Tonight's homework, there's going to be a section for the C# students, and there's going to be a section for the Ruby students. So you're going to create a database called Safari Vacation. It's going to have one table called Animals that has these following columns: an ID, that's going to be a serial primary key. A species, what kind of animal is this? Lions, tigers, bears. Oh my. Scene count, how many times have we seen that animal? Last seen location, where did we last see that animal? Then you're going to make a small console application, a small Ruby application. What am I going to say? Create a Ruby file. Let's just say this. Create a Ruby file called safari.rb. Your application is going to prompt the user with a menu that's going to display the following options. If they type display all, show all the animals. If they type increment, right, to then prompt the user for a species and add 1 to the scene count. So when I run your program, I should see a little menu, kind of like welcome to our guessing game. I should see a little menu that you say, hi user, welcome to the Safari. Type this to do this, type this to do this, type this to do this, and then ask the user first what they want to do. Okay. Hi user, type display all to see all the animals. Type increment to prompt the user for a species. Type species to prompt for a particular species to show the details. Type spot to do something else. if they type increment, then ask what kind of species you're looking for. Go find that species and add 1 to how often it's been seen. You've seen this already. Type species to prompt the user for a specific species and show the detail for just that species. So if they type in bear, so the details for the bear, you've seen this for a movie. Right? Type spot to prompt the user for a species and a location. Update that species' last seen location. You've kind of seen this already. Type extinct to prompt the user for a location and delete all the species in that location. You haven't seen these yet, so you'll have to do some reading. Type total to get the total scene count of all the animals. You haven't seen this either, so you'll have to do some reading. Right? And then go back and show the menu again, or you can exit. Right? So kind of like we did the game, right? Guessing. This time you're showing them a menu of options. Not yes, higher, or lower, but these. And whatever they type in, that's what I want you to do. Right? At the bottom of the homework are some additional resources. These are super, 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 super amazing, helpful things. You should probably read these before you attempt the homework. These are the docs, the guides for ActiveRecord and Rails. So there's a guides.ruby on Rails that is the documentation for Rails and for ActiveRecord. So I would suggest that between now and 3, besides eating lunch, read all of the resources that the resources for the homework say to read. Like, literally sit down and read every paragraph, right? Before you start to work on the homework. Because this will give you, actually you only need to read those sections. Look at that, I just saved you a whole bunch of reading, right? So read the first ActiveRecord Basics, sections 1, 2, 3, and 5. Read ActiveRecord Querying, sections 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Then kind of plan out, cool, how am I gonna work on this? Right? You probably also want to insert some animals using PGCLI into your database. You've got some animals to work with.
So we still have to use SQL first?
Yeah. Right. So use PGCLI to create your animals table and insert a few species of your own. Put some lions and some tigers and some bears, oh my, into the database, and then work on the rest of the homework. So between now and 3, work on reading those docs. When we get back to 3, we'll talk about how to like make a plan for the database, right? Cool. So this is kind of our first introduction, kind of like we had the first day of SQL. We're seeing kind of the first day of doing databases with Ruby. Tomorrow we're going to talk about joining tables together, right? So like we had movies and ratings and movies and actors. Then probably on Wednesday we're going to hook all this up to the internet. So then rather than having little console applications, we're going to get back to making internet applications, right? Because that's where we want to be. So we're going to leave puts and gets behind on Wednesday. And from that point forward, everything we're going to do is going to be back in the web. So our HTML, our CSS, and JavaScript will come back on Wednesday. Cool?
When we're gonna learn how to make API.
That's exactly what we're going to do.